Before we cut the cake, he said, I want to thank someone. My ex-wife. Table 41, back corner, right beside the kitchen doors, a woman sat completely alone. Saraphina Veil, 29 years old. No jewelry except one small pearl in her left ear because the right one had been sold in 2019 to cover a chemistry lab fee that wasn't even hers. Navy pinstripe gown, floor-length, square neck, little ivory lace flowers on the straps. The only nice thing she owned, and she'd steamed it that morning over a pot of boiling water in a studio apartment above a laundromat. Her back was straight, her hands were folded, she did not blink.
Without Saraphina working double shifts, I would never have become the surgeon I am today.
The laughter started at the head table and spread like a spill. His bride laughed loudest, and then the ballroom doors opened. Just one man in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow, black waistcoat, dark tie, black leather gloves, and glasses that made him look like an accountant until you got close enough to see his eyes, which did not. He walked the length of that ballroom without hurrying, past the ice sculpture, past a string quartet that forgot how to play. He stopped at table 41. He looked back down at her, and he asked very quietly, Have they finished?
Good.
Saraphina nodded once. Bang Hun took her hand. Good, he said, my turn. Now, before anybody explains how a man like that ended up standing in a Beverly Grand ballroom on a Saturday night in June, you need to understand what it cost that woman just to walk through the door. Like this video, share it with someone you don't want to miss this video, and tell me in the comment where you are watching from. I'll like to give you a shout out personally. Because this story is not about a rich man saving a poor woman. It's about a woman who paid for everything, got a receipt for nothing, and finally had somebody read the receipts out loud. 3 days earlier, none of this existed. 3 days earlier, she was folding towels. Let's go back. Saraphina Veil met Damen Cross when she was 22 and he was a pre-med student with a hole in his shoe and a hospital dream too big for his bank account. She was working the overnight shift at a diner called Rosie's on Vermont Avenue. He came in at 2 a.m. with a chemistry textbook and ordered coffee he couldn't pay for. She covered it, $2.15. That's the most expensive coffee anybody ever bought, her best friend Tasha would say later. Girl, that cup came with a mortgage. They got married 11 months later at a courthouse. Her dress was borrowed. His tie was clipped on. They ate tacos on the courthouse steps, and he cried and told her, one day I'm going to buy you a house with a door that doesn't stick. She believed him. That's the part people always get wrong. She wasn't stupid. She was loved, and love makes you generous with your future. So she went to work. Job 1, Rosie's, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Job 2, a medical billing office, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., where she learned to read insurance codes so well she could spot a fraudulent claim in 9 seconds. Remember that, it matters later. Job 3, weekends at a dry cleaner, where the owner paid cash and let her sleep 40 minutes in the back if it was slow. 4 hours of sleep, sometimes 3. She lost 18 pounds the first year and told him it was the walking. She sold her grandmother's things one piece at a time. That was the worst part. Grandma Ruth had left her a ring, an old European-cut diamond in a rose gold setting, the kind of ugly, beautiful thing that only means something to the family it belonged to. Ruth had worn it scrubbing floors in a hotel for 31 years. Saraphina pawned it in the winter of 2021 because Damien needed board exam fees and a review course, and the deadline was Friday. She stood at that counter and negotiated with the man behind bulletproof glass. She got $4,000 for a ring worth $11,000. She cried in the car for 6 minutes exactly, then drove to Rosie's and worked a full shift. She never told Damien what it was. She told him she'd figured it out. She always figured it out. 4 years, tuition, rent, textbooks, her car, when his broke down. The suit he wore to his residency interview. She paid for that suit, with tips, in $1 bills, and the tailor counted them out loud on the counter, and she stood there and let him. And on the day Damen Cross walked across the stage in a gown, with 3 cords around his neck, she sat in the second to last row with a bouquet of grocery store carnations, because that's what she could afford. And she screamed his name so loud a woman 2 seats down flinched. That night at a restaurant with cloth napkins that he insisted on paying for, the first thing he'd ever paid for. He set his fork down and said, "Sarah, I've been thinking, we want different things now." She thought he was joking. "I need a partner who fits the life I'm entering," he said. "You'll always be part of my story, but you're a chapter, not the book." He'd rehearsed it. She could hear that he'd rehearsed it. She said, "I paid for the book," he said, "and I'll never forget it." And then he paid the check with her credit card because his hadn't come in yet. The divorce took 4 months. He kept the apartment lease. She kept the debt. 5 months after that, she was still working 2 jobs, still driving the same car, still telling Tasha she was fine. And then on a Tuesday, the invitation came. Thick cream cardstock, gold foil, her name spelled right, which somehow made it worse. "Dr. Damen Cross and Miss Priscilla Ashford request the honor of your presence." Priscilla Ashford, daughter of Gerald Ashford, director of Ashford Presbyterian Medical Center, a man who could make a career with a phone call and end one with a slower phone call. Tasha read the invitation twice and then set it down like it was warm. "Absolutely not." "Tasha." "Sarah, this is a trap. This is a man building a stage and mailing you a ticket." "I know." "Then why are you looking at it like that?" "Because," Saraphina said, "he only invites people he wants to look at while he's happy." And a voice from the doorway of the laundromat said, "Go." He'd been coming in for 6 weeks, same time Thursdays. He never brought laundry. He'd sit in the plastic chair by the window with a folded newspaper he didn't read, and he'd say maybe 9 words a visit. Black gloves, wire thin frame glasses, hair combed straight back, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and when he moved you could see ink running up both forearms, old ink, the kind that isn't decoration. Tasha had a theory. Tasha's theory was that he was an assassin. "He is a quiet man," Saraphina said. "Sarah, quiet men are the ones with basements." His name was Bang Hun. He'd told her that on week 2 and nothing else, and she hadn't asked because in that neighborhood not asking was a form of manners. Now he stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. "Go," he repeated. Saraphina turned. "Why?" "Because people who rewrite history," he said, "should be forced to stand in a room while somebody reads the original." She laughed, actually laughed, first time in weeks. "You've been holding on to that one." 6 weeks, he admitted. Tasha looked between them and said out loud to nobody, "Okay, something is happening and I don't have snacks." At the door, Hyun-tae paused. "Do you have a dress?" "I have 1 dress." "Then wear it," he said, "and wear nothing else, no jewelry, nothing." "Why?" "Because when they see you have nothing," he said, "they'll relax. And people tell the truth when they're relaxed." Quick thing. If you're already invested in Saraphina, do me a favor and hit that like button. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it genuinely decides whether this story reaches anybody else. Okay, back to it, because Saturday is where this gets ugly. The Beverly Grand had a ballroom with chandeliers the size of small cars and a guest list that read like a hospital board directory. Saraphina walked in at 6:12 p.m. with a small black beaded handbag and no plan. Priscilla Ashford found her in 90 seconds. Bride in white silk, hair like a shampoo commercial, smile so warm it could poach an egg. "Saraphina, oh my God, you came." She hugged her, actually hugged her. "Damien said you might not. He was worried it'd be awkward for you." "That's thoughtful. He's so thoughtful." Priscilla took her arm. "Come, we saved you a seat, a really special one. Table 41. Which was 11 feet from the swinging kitchen doors, on the aisle the catering staff use, positioned so that every 90 seconds a server came through backward with a tray, and the door edge tapped the back of her chair. Tap. "Is this okay?" Priscilla asked, eyes enormous with concern. Tap. "It's fine." "You're such a sport." Priscilla squeezed her hand and floated away. A waiter named Marcus set down her water glass, looked at the door, looked at the chair, and quietly moved her place setting 8 inches to the left. "Ma'am," he said, "I've worked 400 weddings. That's the worst seat I've ever seen assigned on purpose." "Thank you, Marcus." "I'ma keep your water full," he said. "That's all I got, but I'ma do it aggressively." That was the last kind thing that happened for 2 hours. They came in twos and threes. People she'd cooked for. People who'd slept on her couch. People who had eaten her food in her apartment when Damien had no apartment. Rena, who'd cried on Saraphina's shoulder through a breakup in 2020, walked past her table with her eyes forward like she was passing a car accident. Dev, who Saraphina had driven to the airport at 4 a.m. 11 separate times, made eye contact, and then turned to the person beside him and said, "Sorry, what were you saying?" And that's the thing nobody warns you about. It isn't the enemies you expect. It's watching people you loved decide in real time that you're not worth the social cost of a hello. She sat with her hands in her lap and did not cry, because she had decided in the car that she would not cry in that building, and Saraphina Veil had spent 7 years keeping promises to herself that nobody else knew about. Her phone buzzed. "Tasha? Are you alive? Tasha?" Blinked twice. "Tasha. Sarah. I swear to God if they sat you by a kitchen." "Saraphina. They sat me by a kitchen." "Tasha. I'm calling my cousin cocktail hour." Priscilla drifted over with 3 bridesmaids in tow holding a tray. "Saraphina, you're so good with people. Would you mind passing these around? Just the front tables, you'd be saving me." The bridesmaids didn't even hide it. One of them made a noise into her hand. There was a full second where the whole corner of the room went still to watch. And Saraphina took the tray. She took it, and she walked the front tables, and she served champagne to people who used to text her happy birthday, and she said, "Here you are," to each one in a voice so steady it started to feel like a weapon. Because she'd carried trays for 4 years. She was good at it. Her hands didn't shake. Not one glass spill. Behind her, a bridesmaid whispered, "She's really doing it." And Priscilla whispered back, "I told you." Marcus, the waiter, took the empty tray out of her hands at the end of the row, and he said low, "You were faster than me, and I've got seniority." "Union scale?" "Ma'am, if you want a job, I know a guy." She laughed, right there. In the middle of the worst night of her life, she laughed, and 3 people turned around because it was the only real sound in the room. Dinner. Damien stood, tapped his glass. He was handsome in the way a magazine ad is handsome, everything correct and nothing warm. "Success," he said, "isn't about where you start. It's about choosing the right partner." Applause. Because some people lift you up. He put a hand on Priscilla's shoulder. And some people, with all the love in the world, hold you exactly where they found you. And he looked directly at table 41 when he said it. 400 people followed his eyes. Saraphina picked up her water glass and drank, and set it down without a sound, and the ice didn't even rattle. After dessert, Priscilla went table to table, with her left hand out. The ring was rose gold, old European cut, a little chip on the lower left facet where Grandma Ruth had caught it on a hotel laundry card in 1987. "It's a family heirloom," Priscilla was saying 4 tables away, "Damien's grandmother's. He said it's been waiting for the right woman." Saraphina stopped breathing. She had spent 5 years training herself not to react, and that ring undid it in 1 second. Her whole face went hot. Her ears rang. Priscilla arrived at table 41 and held out her hand and said sweetly, "It's not really your style, I know, but not everyone gets chosen, right?" And Saraphina looked at her grandmother's ring on a stranger's finger and said in a voice she barely recognized, "It's beautiful." She excused herself. She walked to the restroom. She stood in a marble stall with her hand over her mouth, and she did not make a sound, and she did not cry. And when she came out 90 seconds later, her makeup was perfect. She sat back down, and then Damien picked up his champagne. "Before we cut the cake, I want to thank someone." The projector hummed. The screen came down. Photos. Her, 23. In a Rosie's uniform with her hair tied in a bandana, exhausted mid-blink, holding a bus tub. Her, asleep sitting up on a bus. Her standing outside a pawn shop. He'd taken a picture of her standing outside a pawn shop. "This is Sarah," Damien said fondly. "My biggest supporter. Also, honestly, kind of my biggest project." Laughter. She was needy. She was broke. She was so jealous. I couldn't study with a female classmate without a 3-hour conversation. He shook his head, smiling. "But she worked hard. She did." And without her working those double shifts, I would never have become the surgeon I am today. Applause. Real applause. 400 people clapping at a slideshow of a woman's worst years. Priscilla wiped her eye. That's so sweet, baby. Gerald Ashford, the bride's father, did not clap. He sat at the head table with his hands flat on the tablecloth and a look on his face like a man doing math. And at table 41, under the tablecloth, Saraphina Veil unlocked her phone. She typed one word. Saraphina. Ready. 3 dots. Hyun-tae. 2 minutes. She put the phone face down. She folded her hands. She looked up at the screen where a picture of her 23-year-old self was still glowing 8 feet tall. And she felt something settle in her chest that had been loose for 5 years. Marcus refilled her water. Ma'am, he murmured, you good? Marcus, she said, you're going to want to stand somewhere with a view. He looked at her. Then he looked at the doors. Then he quietly walked over to the dessert station, picked up a tray of nothing, and positioned himself against the back wall like a man buying a ticket. The doors opened at 9:04 p.m. There was no music sting. Nobody announced him. That was the strange part. Then 400 people stopped talking for a man doing absolutely nothing dramatic. White shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms inked in old dark lines that ran up under the fabric. Black waistcoat, dark tie, knotted small. Black leather gloves he did not remove. Glasses that should have made him look harmless. He walked without rushing. 2 men in gray suits stayed at the doors and did not follow him in. The whispering started. Who is that? Is he with the venue? He looks like somebody's lawyer. Damien laughed into the microphone, a little too loud, the way people do when their stomach knows something their mouth doesn't. Sir, this is a private event, family only. Bang Hun stopped walking. He turned his head. I am, he said. He kept walking, straight to table 41, and the crowd parted for him the way crowds do when nobody wants to be the one to test it. He stopped in front of Saraphina, and then he did something nobody expected. He took off his jacket, and his black suit jacket, still warm, and laid it across her bare shoulders, careful, like he was covering something valuable that had been left out in the rain. Then he crouched down, so his eyes were level with hers, and in a voice that only the closest 3 tables could hear, he asked, Did anyone here thank you properly? Seraphina's chin trembled once, just once. No, she said. Okay, said Hyun-tae. He stood up, he turned around, he faced 400 people, and he took a small stack of paper out of his inside pocket. I'm going to be honest with you. This next part is my favorite thing I've ever written. If you want to see how it lands, subscribe, because the sequel to this one is already recorded. All right, watch what he does with those papers. My name is Bang Hun-tae, he said, and he said it like a man reading a weather report. Gerald Ashford's water glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Just Gerald. Nobody else in that room knew the name. But Gerald Ashford sat on 3 hospital boards and 1 real estate trust, and he set the glass down without drinking. I'm going to read some numbers, Hyun-tae said. It won't take long. Dr. Cross, correct me if I'm wrong. He held up the first page. August 2020. Tuition, second year, $11,400, paid in 3 installments from a checking account ending 4471. He looked up. That's her account, doctor, not yours. Damien laughed. Okay, this is up. Who let this guy? March 2021. Board exam fees and review course, $4,000 cash. Hyun-tae turned the page. Sourced from a pawn transaction at Vermont Loan and Jewelry. Item, 1 rose gold ring, old European cut, chip on the lower left facet. The room made a sound, a collective, involuntary sound. Slowly, every head in that ballroom turned toward Priscilla Ashford's left hand. Priscilla looked at the ring, then at Damien, then at the ring again. It's his grandmother's, she said. His grandmother, Hyun-tae said, is alive and lives in Fresno, and I spoke with her Wednesday. Lovely woman. She has never owned a diamond. He tilted his head. Dr. Cross booked that ring back from the pawn shop in April, $2,200, because the loan had defaulted and the shop was clearing inventory. He bought his fiancée an engagement ring at a discount and from the woman who pawned it. Somebody at table 9 said, "Oh my God," and did not apologize for saying it out loud. "Keep reading," said Gerald Ashford. "Dad, keep reading." Hyun-tae turned the page. Rent, 41 months on an apartment leased in her name, $61,200. Car repairs, his car, $3,100. Interview suit, $680, paid in cash at a tailor on Beverly in $1 bills. He paused. The tailor remembers. He said she stood there while he counted it and never once looked at the floor. Saraphina closed her eyes. Medical school application fees, textbooks, a microscope, study group dinners he hosted and she cooked. Page. Total, 5 years, $142,890, not including labor. Labor, someone said. She worked 3 jobs, Hyun-tae said. Roughly 91 hours a week for 4 years. If you'd like, I can price that too. I brought a calculator. And that's when it turned. You could feel it turn. The laughter that had been so easy 20 minutes ago had nowhere to go, and 400 people sat in it. Damien's face had gone a color that doesn't have a name. "This is a stunt," he said. She's paying you." "Sarah, is this what you—" "Don't talk to her," Hyun-tae said. It wasn't loud, that was the thing. It was almost gentle. Damien stopped talking. "You said she held you back," Hyun-tae continued. "So let's talk about what you did with all that freedom." He took out one more page. This one was folded differently. Older. October last year, a private lending facility issued you a personal line of credit, $2,400,000 against projected earnings. You used it for a down payment on a house in Calabasas, a Porsche, and this is the part I found interesting, $160,000 in cosmetic clinic investments that failed in March. Gerald Ashford stood up. $2.4 million, he said. "You told me you were debt-free. You sat in my study. You had a glass of my scotch and told me you were debt-free. Gerald, don't." Gerald's voice did not rise. That was somehow worse. "You're marrying into a family that survives on credentials and audits, and you have a $2 million personal loan you didn't disclose." "There's one more thing," said Hyun-tae. The room went absolutely silent. He held up the page and turned it around so the front tables could see the signature line. "The loan required a guarantor," he said. "There is a signature on this document. It is Saraphina Veil's name." Saraphina's head came up. "I never signed anything," she said. "I haven't spoken to him in—" "I know," said Hyun-tae. "The signature is forged. It's not close. He didn't even use her middle initial, and she's used her middle initial on every legal document since she was 18. He set the page down on the nearest table. For 8 months, this woman has had $2.4 million of somebody else's debt attached to her name. Her credit was denied twice this year. She thought it was student loans." Saraphina's hand went to her mouth. She'd applied for a small business loan in February, a $12,000 loan, for a laundromat she wanted to buy from a man named Hector, who was retiring. They denied her in 9 minutes, and she'd assumed she just wasn't the kind of person who got things. "You forged her name," Priscilla said. She had gone completely white. "Damien, you forged her name." "It was a formality. It's a felony," Gerald said. "And here's the twist and nobody in that ballroom saw coming." Hyun-tae folded the page and put it back in his pocket and said almost as an afterthought, "Also, that lending facility is mine." Damien blinked. "What?" "Kestrel Private Capital is a subsidiary of a holding company I control. I own your debt, Dr. Cross." He adjusted one glove. "I've owned it since October. I didn't know whose it was until 6 weeks ago, when I saw a woman folding towels in a laundromat with a denial letter taped inside her locker and a name on it I recognized. 6 weeks. That's how long he'd been sitting in that plastic chair by the window. Not stalking, not scheming, verifying, because he refused to walk into a woman's life on a guess. "Saraphina," he said without turning around, "you're released from the guarantee as of 9 minutes ago. My counsel filed it before I walked in. You don't owe anyone anything. You never did." And that, not the money, not the ring, not the 400 faces, that was the thing that broke her. Because for 5 years, she'd carried a weight, and she'd assumed the weight was just what her life felt like. Priscilla Ashford took off the ring. She didn't throw it. She wasn't dramatic about it. She slid it off her finger, and she walked the length of the head table, down the steps, across the dance floor, all the way to table 41. She put it on the tablecloth in front of Saraphina. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice cracked in the middle of it. "I'm so sorry. I sat you by the kitchen." "I know. I made you carry a tray." "I know." Priscilla pressed her hand over her mouth. "I thought he told me you were unstable. He said you'd tried to ruin it. He said if I was cruel enough, early enough, you'd leave before the ceremony and it would be easier for everyone." Saraphina looked at her for a long moment. "You believed him fast," she said. "That's not a crime. I believed him for 4 years." Priscilla let out one wet, awful laugh. "God, we're both idiots." "You're 24, Saraphina said. "You've got time to be a smarter one." Gerald Ashford was already at the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he straightened his jacket. "There will be no wedding. The bar is open. Please drink my money." Nobody laughed. Then somebody did. Then the room stood up all at once. 400 people gathering purses and coats, and the string quartet, man bless them, started packing up mid-note. Damien came around the table. "Sarah." All the polish was gone. He looked 22 again, and hungry, and it was the most honest she'd ever seen him. "Sarah, please, tell them it wasn't like that. Tell them we agreed. Tell them you offered." His hands were shaking. "One sentence. You've got the whole room. One sentence and I can still fix this. Please, please tell them." Hyuntae didn't move, didn't step in, didn't say a word. He just watched and let her have it because it was hers. Saraphina Veil stood up. Her shoulders were still wrapped in a jacket that smelled like cedar and rain. She looked at the man she'd bought a suit for in $1 bills, and she said no. That was it. 1 word, 2 letters. She'd said yes to him 1,000 times. Yes to the extra shift, yes to the loan, yes to the ring, yes to "I'll figure it out," yes to a chapter instead of a book. And the first time she ever said no, it emptied a ballroom. Damien opened his mouth. Marcus the waiter appeared beside him with a tray and said cheerfully, "Sir, are we done with this plate?" "What?" "'Cause we're clearing." Marcus picked up Damien's untouched dinner. "Yeah, we're clearing everything." Hyuntae picked up the ring from the tablecloth. He turned it once in the light, found the chip on the lower left facet, and held it out to her on his glove palm. "Grandma Ruth," he said. Saraphina took it. She put it on her right hand, the finger where the earring's twin should have been, and she held her own fist against her chest, and finally, she cried. Standing straight up, in front of everybody without covering her face. "Shall we leave?" he asked. He offered his arm. She took it. And they walked out through 400 people, past the ice sculpture, past the abandoned cake, and not one person said a word.